Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves waking up not in a cozy modern bed with memory foam and Egyptian cotton sheets, but on a crinkled, crackling bed of straw. There's a sharp piece poking your shoulder, and something definitely just scurried near your ear. You open your eyes slowly, staring up at a thatched roof with gaps that let in the first thin beams of morning light. The scent is a cocktail of old smoke, damp straw, and something vaguely sour that you've grown used to. You scratch your scalp instinctively, again, and feel the tiny welts left behind by the chattering lice colonies you share your hair with. Good morning, medieval peasant. You've made it through another night. Your first thought isn't breakfast. It's water. Your throat is dry, your lips cracked. Next to you is a dented wooden bucket from yesterday's trip to the village well, with just enough cold water at the bottom for a rinse. You crouch over it, splashing some over your face. It's not refreshing so much as jarring, icy and just a little gritty, but it wipes the crust from your eyelids. There's no soap, not today. Soap is a luxury, an alkaline mixture of lye and animal fat that leaves your skin raw but clean. You used the last of it 3 weeks ago, and you haven't scraped together enough coin to buy or barter more. You grab the tunic that hangs on the peg. It's the only one you own, and it smells like smoke, sweat, and life. You shake it out, and a few suspicious particles fall to the floor, straw bits, maybe a bug leg. Underneath it, you wear your linen shift. You haven't had the time or energy to wash either properly in days. But you tell yourself the layers help keep fleas out. Whether that's true or just something hopeful villagers say is up for debate. As you dress, you can hear the village stirring, boots on soil, a baby crying, a door creaking open. Somewhere nearby, a pig lets out a long, protesting squeal. You sigh and stretch, already stiff. Your mattress of straw doesn't do your back any favors, and the draft from the wall gaps hasn't helped. But it's better than the ground. Some neighbors sleep straight on packed dirt floors. You, at least, have a blanket. Thin, itchy wool with more patches than original fabric, but still yours. You step outside. The chill air smacks your cheeks awake. Smoke curls lazily from a few chimney holes, and the sky is a soft gray, not yet threatening rain. The village smells of manure, old cooking fires, and something metallic. Blood, maybe, from the butcher's corner. You stretch again, mindful of the ache in your lower back, and look down at your hands. Dirt under the nails, calluses forming their own topography. These are the hands of a survivor. Now it's time to handle nature's call. The village doesn't have indoor plumbing. Only the castle has that kind of wonder. And even then, it's just a fancy bench with a hole. You walk past a few sleeping chickens and make your way toward the communal latrine. It's not far, just behind the grain store, and it's noticeable. The smell hits you a few steps away, ripe, sharp, inescapable. The structure is a leaning shack of wood planks, with a narrow pit dug beneath it, filling steadily with the offerings of the entire street. Inside, it's dim, and the buzzing of flies greets you. There's no seat, just a plank with a hole and an old rope nailed to the wall for balance. You do what you came to do, quickly, and when it's time to wipe, well, you remember that you forgot to bring the usual bundle of straw. No cloth, no moss. You end up using a handful of dry grass from the corner. It does the job, just barely. Behind the latrine is the cesspit, a deeper hole where people dump chamber pots and garbage. It stinks of decay, rot, and things better left undescribed. You once watched the gong farmer come in the dead of night with a cart a rope and a scoop, wading into the muck to empty the pit. You heard he makes decent coin. You also heard he passed out from the fumes once and nearly drowned in it. No thanks. You head back to your hut, careful not to step in anything. You take the long way, past the well, where you see a few neighbors already lining up with buckets. The well's not deep, but the pulley creaks like an old woman's knees. You'll have to haul water later to wash, to cook, and maybe, if you're feeling ambitious, to scrub out your shift in the river. At home, you light a small fire using some dried sticks and last season's dung patties. The smoke curls upward, stinging your eyes. It's good for keeping away fleas, they say. Historians still debate whether burning dried dung truly repelled pests, or simply gave people something else to breathe besides their own filth. Either way, you sit near it, hands outstretched. Warmth is brief and precious. There's no mirror. Mirrors are for nobles and priests. If you want to see your face, you can try peering into a bowl of still water. You tried once. All you saw was a blur, muddy skin, tired eyes, and something that looked back like it had seen too much already. You glance at your teeth with your fingers. Yup, still there. A little wool scrap nearby helps rub off the morning film, and if you're feeling fancy, you chew on a hazel twig. You remember someone saying hazel's good for the gums, or maybe it was just what was growing near the latrine. Breakfast is still a ways off, but first, there's work to do. The fields wait. The animals need tending. And your chafing shift is already starting to itch again. Another beautiful morning in the medieval countryside. Just you, your lice, and the smell of burning dung. You rub the sleep from your eyes, what little of it you got anyway, and make your way toward the edge of the village where the grain shed squats like a tired ox. But you pause. There's something else to handle before your chores can truly begin. Nature calls again, more insistently this time, and not in the gentle, contemplative morning way. This is the midday urgency kind. You glance around and debate your options. The nearest outhouse, shared between 5 households, is behind the neighbor's goat pen. It's been patched together with rotting timber and wishful thinking. The roof is mostly a tarp, the door is perpetually ajar, and the pit underneath it is filling up faster than anyone wants to admit. Still, it's better than the bucket. You shuffle over, holding your breath against the wind that brings with it the unmistakable perfume of a full cesspit, a bouquet of ammonia, compost, and something almost meaty. Inside, you try not to look down as you squat over the hole in the plank. You remember last winter when someone dropped a spoon in there and tried to fish it out. They gave up. The spoon's still down there. You count the seconds to distract yourself from the smell, from the flies, from the awareness that the entire village might walk by and hear every squelch. Medieval modesty has its limits. When you're done, it's time to clean up. An activity with more creativity than comfort. No toilet paper, of course. Instead, you fumble for the bundle of straw tucked behind a loose beam. It's dry, at least, and better than last week's handful of moss, which gave you a rash. Some people use rags, if they can spare them. Others use smooth stones or even corn cobs. You've tried the latter. Once. You emerge with as much dignity as you can gather, brushing your hands on your tunic and hoping no one noticed. The sun's a little higher now, and the smoke from morning fires is settling into the thatch, making the whole village smell like roasted onions and damp wool. You pass by an older woman dumping a chamber pot into the ditch behind her home. The splash is impressive. You nod respectfully and keep walking. Your own chamber pot isn't much better. It's a cracked ceramic thing that leaks when you're not careful. You usually empty it in the communal pit, which, despite its filth, is marginally better than chucking it into the street. Technically, there are rules about waste disposal. Unofficially, most people just shout, "Gardy Lou," and let it fly. You've learned to avoid walking too close to second-story windows. At least today isn't cesspit day. Once every month or so, the gong farmer comes by, part gravedigger, part alchemist, part unfortunate soul. He climbs down into the deep pits at night, scooping out the sludge with a long-handled ladle, wearing boots that have never been fully clean in their lives. You once asked him if the pay was worth it. He said, "Better than starving." You believe him. Now, you're thinking about food, which means you're thinking about whether your hands are clean enough to eat. You stop by the water barrel outside your hut and splash some over your fingers. It's cold and a little cloudy. No soap today, just friction and hope. Washing hands is one of the few hygiene habits everyone agrees on. Not out of modern germ theory, but because even peasants know food tastes better when your fingers aren't sticky with yesterday. You sit down on the threshold of your door, grabbing a rough wooden bowl and the same spoon you've had for years. Lunch is the same as yesterday, lukewarm barley porridge with a few onion bits. There's no salt left, but the onions at least give it personality. You eat slowly, chewing more than necessary just to make it last. Across the yard, your neighbor is crouched with her daughter, who's fidgeting while her mother combs through her hair. You know what's happening. Lice patrol. You'll probably get your turn later. For now, you notice a small itch starting just above your ear. You scratch without thinking, then glance at the sleeve of your tunic. Yep, one of the little suckers, still alive. You flick it off and sigh. They say lice love warmth and dirty heads. They also say everyone has them. You try to believe both things. After the meal, you wander toward the village green, where a few families are gathered under the single shade tree. Someone's playing a flute, badly, and a pair of boys are chasing each other with sticks. You sit with your sister and help her untangle her hair. As you pick through the fine strands, you find not just lice, but little white eggs, nits, clinging to the roots like stubborn weeds. It's tedious, it's gross, it's weirdly comforting. Grooming each other is one of the few moments of calm in your day, like monkeys in the sun. You murmur something about old Mrs. Alwyn, who everyone says hasn't bathed since Pentecost, and who once tried to use boiling vinegar to kill her lice. It didn't work. She lost half her hair and now ties a rag around her head like a pirate. Your sister snorts, then slaps your hand when you tug too hard. It's a ritual, half hygiene, half affection, and entirely medieval. A few older villagers sit nearby and trade parasite remedies, boil salt water and rinse with it, smear garlic on your scalp, leave a slice of bacon under your bed to draw the bugs out. The logic is shaky, but when you live this close to the dirt, anything feels worth a try. One woman swears by the glue toast method. You know, the one where you stick a candle in a slice of bread, coat it in tree sap, and leave it beside the bed to trap fleas. You tried that once. All it caught was dust and your brother's toe. As the sun starts to dip lower, you stretch and feel the crackle in your spine. You've survived another few hours. You're dirty, itchy, and vaguely ashamed of your last trip to the latrine. But you're fed, your fingers are semi-clean, and there's a certain pride in still being upright. Tomorrow will be more of the same. But tonight, the hardest work is behind you. And the fleas? They're just part of the furniture. You decide to make the most of the remaining light by tending to the laundry. Not because you particularly enjoy scrubbing clothing by hand, but because this is the only outfit you own, and it's starting to develop a personality of its own. With a wooden tub under one arm and a bar of gritty lye soap, more pebble than bar at this point, in the other, you head toward the river. The path is muddy from last night's storm, and the air hangs heavy with the scent of earth, livestock, and stagnant water. As you get closer to the riverbank, you see a few other villagers already hard at work, kneeling in the shallows with their clothes dunked and twisted like old rags. One woman is beating a pair of breeches against a rock with an intensity usually reserved for exorcisms. You find your spot, dip the tunic into the cold water, and begin scrubbing with short, rough motions. The soap bubbles weakly, barely lathering, but it's something. As you work, you notice the film of grime in the river, bits of hay, flecks of ash, and a sheen of something unpleasant drifting lazily downstream. You try not to think about the upstream cesspits. Most of the time, you just tell yourself, if it's moving, it's clean. The river always moves, therefore, it's clean. Sort of. While scrubbing the underarms of your shirt, a crime scene unto themselves, you overhear a conversation. A neighbor is describing a rash she got from wearing damp clothes that hadn't dried properly. You nod, knowingly. Fungal skin infections are just part of life. Historians still debate whether people in the Middle Ages understood what fungi were, or simply blamed rashes on bad air. But you know enough to dry your shirt in the sun, even if it means going half naked for a while. After rinsing and wringing out your tunic until your arms ache, you spread it out on a nearby bush to dry. You notice a few lice drifting in the current and wonder whether they survived the wash. Probably. They're survivors, just like you. With your shirt drying in the sun, you're reduced to your linen undershift, sweat-stained and paper-thin. It flaps a little in the breeze, giving you an odd sense of freedom. At least until a mosquito lands squarely on your neck. You swat at it, muttering something unprintable, and rub your skin with a crushed mint leaf from your pouch. It smells nice. Whether it works or not is debatable. You've heard of people stuffing their bedding with mint, lavender, even chamomile, hoping to ward off bedbugs and fleas. It never works for long, but it makes the place smell less like feet. As you wait for your tunic to dry, you chew the end of a hazel twig, softening it into primitive bristles. Hazel is your go-to toothbrush. Some folks prefer willow or yew, but you find hazel less bitter. You use the twig to scrub at your teeth, which are already worn down from a lifetime of stone-ground bread. No cavities, at least. Sugar is for the rich. But your enamel? Sanded smoother than a monk's bald spot. You rinse your mouth with water from the river, regrettable but habitual, and think back to your cousin's visit to the barber. Not for a shave, but for a tooth extraction. You remember his face afterward, pale, puffy, half numb from the cider he chugged to dull the pain. The barber, grinning like a man possessed, had tugged the molar out with metal tongs, while 3 men held your cousin down. There was a lot of screaming and swearing, and later soup. That memory is reason enough to keep chewing your twigs. With the tunic mostly dry and the sun beginning to slant golden through the trees, you gather your things and make your way home, the shirt draped over your shoulder like a badge of honor. You pass by the baker's stall, what's left of it, and catch a whiff of stale barley bread. It smells better than it tastes. You remember that time when half the village got sick after eating a batch of moldy rye. The bread had grown dark streaks of ergot, a fungus that no one recognized for what it was. People thought it was punishment or witchcraft, or maybe just bad luck loaf. A few folks hallucinated. One man saw angels, another stripped naked and danced in the stream. He was fined, of course, but also gently admired for his flair. You smile at the memory. It was the closest the village had come to a festival in months. Back at home, you hang your tunic over the door to air out the last bit of damp. The evening breeze carries the scent of smoke and freshly turned soil. Someone is boiling cabbage again. You try not to gag. Before heading inside, you stop by the animal pen. The goats look at you with their usual judgmental eyes. You refill their trough with a splash of water from the bucket, pat the scruffy one on the head, and remind yourself that at least you don't have to sleep in the barn. Not tonight. Inside, your younger brother is lying on his back, holding a flea between two fingers like a trophy. "Caught this one on the dog," he says proudly. "Think it's the fat kind." You nod solemnly and toss him a piece of dried lavender. "Put that under your blanket tonight," you tell him. "See if the rest follow." He does, and you both chuckle, because if you don't laugh at the fleas, they win. You sit by the hearth and stir the small pot of lentils you left soaking earlier. It's not much, but it'll fill your stomach, and that's all you need. You sniff your armpit discreetly. Better. Not perfect, but better. You'll take it. Outside, the sun is starting to melt into the horizon, throwing orange streaks across the thatch rooftops. Tomorrow, you'll repeat most of today, but that's tomorrow's problem. For now, you've washed your shirt, brushed your teeth, slapped a mosquito, and survived the latrine. Not bad for a Tuesday. The evening wind has a bit more bite now, nudging you back indoors as the last of the sun gives way to shadows. Your tunic is finally dry, stiff in spots, but not damp, and that's what matters. You slip it on over your shift and immediately feel the familiar itch in your shoulder blades. Is it clean? Technically, yes. Does it feel like it? Not quite. But in the world you live in, cleanliness is a spectrum, and you're firmly on the less awful end of it tonight. Before settling in for the night, there's one more errand you've been dreading. The throb in your jaw that started days ago has grown angrier, more persistent. It's the kind of pain that doesn't just stay in one place. It echoes behind your eyes, hums in your ear, and flares when you breathe too cold. You've resisted going to the barber as long as possible, hoping garlic paste or a salt gargle would magically fix it. They didn't. Nothing did. So now, as dusk creeps across the village, you find yourself shuffling toward the low wooden hut with the red cloth fluttering outside. The barber's shop is equal parts haircut station, apothecary, and amateur torture chamber. A line of tools hangs on the wall: blades, scissors, oddly shaped hooks, and a pair of rusted tongs that you swear you saw used on a pig last week. You duck through the doorway, and the barber looks up from where he's shaving a chicken. You hope it's for dinner. He grins, revealing two teeth that clearly haven't seen a twig brush in years. "Which one is it?" he asks without greeting. You open your mouth and point. He peers in, pokes once with the end of a spoon, and nods. "Ah, rotten to the root. We'll have to pull it." You try to swallow, but your throat's too dry. "Is it gonna hurt?" you ask, already knowing the answer. "Only if you're alive," he says cheerfully, then pours you a mug of something strong and mean. It smells like feet and firewood. You chug it. It burns on the way down and numbs your lips, but not your nerves. The barber doesn't tie you down, though part of you thinks he should. He wedges a stick into your mouth to bite on, then positions the tongs. You clench every muscle in your body. The pressure builds. Then comes the crunch, the unmistakable sound of enamel giving way. Pain follows, hot and explosive. You're not sure if the scream you hear is yours or someone else's. When it's over, your mouth is bleeding, your eyes are watering, and the barber is holding up your molar like it's a prized fish. "You're lucky," he says. "Came out clean." Some people lose bits of jaw. You pay him in onions and a cracked egg. You're not sure that's a fair exchange, but the tooth is out and you're not dead. Win-win. Back home, you hold a rag to your cheek and sit near the hearth, trying to focus on something other than the throbbing crater in your mouth. Your sister offers you a spoonful of honey, saved for rare occasions and toothaches. It helps. Slightly. The fire crackles low, the kind of comforting background noise that drowns out stomach rumbles and creaking floorboards. You lie back on the straw pallet, letting the pain pulse in time with your heartbeat. You think about all the people who don't have the money or courage to visit the barber and just let their teeth rot. You used to laugh at old Thomas and his toothless grin. Now you understand him a little better. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks, then another. You hear footsteps shuffling in the dark and someone muttering a prayer, probably heading to the priest's hut. You wonder, not for the first time, whether anyone ever asks him to bless their latrine. You reach for your wool blanket. It's not warm, but it's better than nothing. The straw pokes through the holes, and you make a mental note to fluff it tomorrow. Maybe mix in some mint. Your jaw aches too much to sleep yet, so you stare at the ceiling, tracing the patterns in the smoke stains. You imagine your molar being passed around by children as a good luck charm, or maybe tucked under a pillow for the lice fairy. You smile despite the pain, then wince at the effort. The night stretches ahead, and you know it'll be a long one. Still, the worst is over. No more tooth, no more anticipation, just a dull ache, a scratchy blanket, and the promise of another day where you probably won't have to visit the barber again. Hopefully. The pain in your mouth hasn't disappeared, but it's dulled to a manageable throb, like a persistent drumbeat behind your jaw. You're determined not to let it ruin the rest of the evening, even if every swallow reminds you of the barbaric tongs and the way the barber had whistled cheerfully while rinsing blood off his hands. So, with your cheek still tender, you turn your attention to your bed. Bed is a generous term, more of a wooden frame with a sack stuffed full of straw, flattened from years of use. You pull back the wool blanket and sigh. The straw is long past fresh. Bits of husk, hair, and something suspiciously bug-like tumble out as you adjust it. You know it needs replacing, but fresh straw is harder to come by this time of year. You make do with what you have. Time to prepare for battle with the insects. You reach under the cot and pull out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside are dried herbs, lavender, mint, and chamomile, pilfered in small sprigs from the herb woman's garden. You scatter them into the mattress as best you can, hoping their scent might deter the fleas and bedbugs that have made your straw-filled sack their ancestral home. Does it actually work? No one really knows. Some say it does. Some say the bugs just like the aroma, but at the very least your bed will smell like a meadow, even if it feels like a porcupine. Next comes the glue bread. You retrieve an old crust of stale rye bread and smear a generous amount of pine sap over the top, sticky and golden, gathered from trees during the last walk into the woods. Into the center of the bread, you wedge a stub of tallow candle. The idea, as passed down from your aunt, is that fleas will be drawn to the warmth of the flame and get stuck in the sap. A folk remedy, a superstition. But after one too many nights waking up with itchy red bites and tiny black specks crawling in your armpits, you're ready to try anything. You place the candlebread trap near the edge of your bedding, where the frame meets the wall, not too close to the straw. You've heard horror stories about mattresses catching fire. One neighbor once tried burning chamomile under the bed to smoke out the parasites. It worked, along with burning out the entire shack. He had to sleep in the granary for a week. Satisfied with your preparations, you take a step back and admire your fortress. Is it clean? Not in any modern sense, but it's habitable. Sort of. You take a moment to rub your hands together and blow out a deep breath. Your mouth aches, your feet are sore, and your back is itching again. But the evening is moving toward its quieter hours, and you've survived the worst of the day. Then you hear her, your older sister, back from the fields, walking slowly, one hand pressed low on her belly. You glance up and immediately understand. There's a look you've come to recognize. She doesn't speak. She just nods and sits near the fire, clutching a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She unwraps it gently. Inside are strips of linen, worn, cleanish, but stained from many uses, and a handful of rags. She pulls out a pouch of dried herbs, lavender, sage, and rosemary. You say nothing. There's nothing to say. You've seen her go through this each month, quietly, without complaint, just as your mother once did, just as her daughter will someday. There's no such thing as a menstrual product in this world. No pads, no tampons, no painkillers, just cloth and hope. Some women use moss if they're lucky enough to gather it. Others, out of desperation, wrap cloth around thin twigs and pray it holds. Your sister prefers the cloth folded thick and tied with rope around her waist. You've seen her wince when she walks, tug at her dress to hide the stains. Some days she bleeds through anyway. No one talks about it. Not really. The church warns that a bleeding woman is impure. She shouldn't enter the chapel, shouldn't touch the bread, shouldn't go near animals, lest she curse the milk or the lambs. She doesn't believe any of that, but she still keeps her distance, just in case. She sprinkles some herbs into a pocket sewn into her undershift, an attempt to mask the scent, not that anyone would dare comment on it aloud. You've heard the rumors, the whispers. She smells like iron and old herbs. The judgment hides behind veiled glances and polite coughs. But no one offers a solution. You offer her a flask of water and she smiles, tired, grateful. There's a quiet courage in her ritual, a defiance even, in the way she prepares herself for another night, knowing what's coming. You help her tuck the cloth away, then return to your own corner of the room. The fire is low now, casting flickers against the wall. You light your flea trap candle and watch as the wax begins to melt, pooling around the crusty edges of the bread. It smells faintly of tallow and pine, comforting in its own smoky way. You lie back on your straw mattress, already itching at the ankles, and listen to the quiet noises of the hut. A soft rustle of fabric, the shifting of straw, the telltale click-click of a mouse skittering near the wall. But the bugs are slower tonight, or at least respectful of your preparations. Before you drift off, you murmur a small thank you to the herbs, to the bread, to the absence of rats on your face, and let the day's weight begin to lift from your limbs. The glue trap candle flickers. A gnat circles it and vanishes in the heat. One down, a few hundred to go. Sometime after the candle guttered and the fire settled into embers, you must have fallen asleep, only to wake now, not with a start, but with that quiet awareness of discomfort. Your back itches. Your cheek is stuck to the wool blanket. And something, probably a flea, just hopped off your collarbone and made a casual exit toward your ribs. You sigh. It's not quite morning, but it's not night anymore either. The in-between hours, where your body rests only because it has no choice. A scratching sound draws your attention to the far end of the room. Your sister is awake again. She's sitting with her knees drawn up, the linen cloth in her hands changed out and folded neatly beside her. A dark patch stains the hem of her shift. She notices your gaze and gives you a tired half smile. You nod and she nods back. Nothing more needs to be said. She hands you the small bundle of used rags, and you walk it out to the washing tub behind the hut. The air is crisp, still damp with morning mist. You rinse the cloth in cold water, watching the pink swirl bloom and then fade. The herbs she used earlier, lavender mostly, have left their scent, mingling with the metallic tang of blood. You scrub gently, remembering her words once. The shame isn't in bleeding. It's in pretending it doesn't happen. You lay the cloths out on a flat rock to dry, placing small stones at the corners so the wind doesn't carry them away. No one will touch them. Everyone in the village knows what they are, and even the most careless boys steer clear. That's the one mercy of living in a small place. Secrets don't stay secret, but some taboos are honored. As you finish and return inside, you pass by the hearth, where a pot of water is already heating for breakfast. The fire was rebuilt from the coals, the way your mother taught you. You're not sure who lit it, maybe your sister, maybe someone else. But you add a handful of barley to the pot, stir slowly, and let it bubble into something edible. While it cooks, you grab a slice of yesterday's bread. It's gone hard overnight, like most bread does. You sniff it cautiously. No mold this time, at least none you can see. You remember the story of your Uncle Willem, who once ate a loaf that had been stored too close to the damp cellar wall. Within hours, he'd started convulsing. Said he saw angels, or maybe devils. He ran naked through the village, shouting that the sky was falling. Everyone laughed until he collapsed and never got back up. Some blamed bad grain. Others said he'd been cursed. A few muttered about ergot, the mold that grows on rye and tricks your brain into thinking it's on fire. Historians still argue about it. Was it ergot poisoning? Or just a convenient excuse for madness in a world without diagnosis? Either way, you double-check your bread now. You chew slowly, letting the lentils from last night settle in your belly. The warmth is small, but comforting. And as you eat, you look around the hut. It's not much. Wattle and daub walls, a few possessions, the blanket you share, the straw mattress that smells like someone else's childhood. But it's yours. It's safety, in its own flawed, lumpy way. After breakfast, you step outside again. The mist is lifting. The first real light of morning is pushing through the trees. Chickens strut near the doorway, pecking for grubs. The goat bleats indignantly. Everything in your body wants to lie back down and do nothing for the rest of the day. But that's not an option. You've still got your chores, and your teeth aren't going to clean themselves. You grab a fresh hazel twig and start gnawing at one end, softening the wood into bristles. You rub it across your teeth methodically, paying attention to the new gap where your molar used to be. It's tender, but healing. You finish with a swish of river water. Not ideal, but familiar. A few villagers pass by and nod their greetings. One of them is old Mara, who carries a string of garlic around her neck and swears it keeps the worms out of her ears. She once told you she thought her ear was being haunted by a singing spirit until someone suggested earworms. Not the musical kind, the mythical ones. Tiny creatures that crawl into your head through your ear canal and whisper madness. You didn't believe her, of course. But then again, you've seen things too. Weird boils that show up overnight. Wounds that ooze colors no one can name. Mites that only bite on Tuesdays. You walk toward the central path, kicking a stone absently. There's a new rumor floating around the village. Something about a man who tried to get rid of lice by stuffing mint up his nose and holding his head over steaming dung. It didn't work, but it became a tale. And tales are as much a part of survival as bread and water. You return home, gather the dry linen from outside, and help your sister fold it. There's no ceremony, no thanks, just a shared understanding that this is how you keep going. One cloth, one fire, one meal at a time. You glance over at the bread trap from the night before. A few black dots are stuck to it. Fleas, maybe. Or ash. Either way, you call it a success. You light another candle, this time for comfort, not bugs, and set it on the hearth. And then you sit, just sit, in the quiet. Not itching, not bleeding, not running for the latrine, just breathing in a space that, for the moment, feels calm. You think about tomorrow, about another round of washing, scratching, chewing, and pretending. But right now, that can wait. You're alive. You're not entirely filthy. And in this world, that's almost a miracle. As the sun arcs toward its peak and shadows begin to shrink beneath the eaves of the village homes, you step back outside. The air has warmed just enough to make the itch between your shoulder blades even more annoying. And despite your earlier efforts with the herbs and the flea bread, you can feel something tiny, doing an exploratory march across your rib cage. You scratch it away with the blunt edge of your knuckles, then slap your side twice for good measure. One day you'll win, but not today. You hear your name from across the way. It's your cousin calling you over. He's standing near his hut, holding a square of linen like a prized trophy. "You won't believe what I found," he says with a smirk. You walk over, curious. He unrolls the linen and reveals a perfectly shaped, nearly whole, dried beetle. "It crawled out of my bed," he adds, proud for some reason. "Means the mint is working." You nod, impressed, not by the beetle, but by his optimism. After that impromptu pest exhibition, you head back to your own corner of the world. It's time to prep your bed again for the night. The routine is the same. Fluff the straw, shake out the blanket, check for any new holes that rodents may have chewed through while you weren't looking. The mint and chamomile mixture you laid down last night has done its part. The smell is pleasant, and there are fewer black specks on your sheet this morning. Fewer, not none. You sit by the straw mattress and begin the nightly ritual of adding more herbs. A pinch here, a sprinkle there. It feels absurd, like seasoning a roast you'll never eat, but you've come to associate the smell with comfort, with safety. You remember your grandmother doing the same. She used to say, "If you can't kill the bugs, at least confuse them." Outside, children are chasing one another with sticks, their feet slapping against the packed dirt. The older ones are pretending to be knights, of course, dragging scrap metal like swords, shouting oaths and insults, half remembered from festival plays. One of them shouts, "You smell worse than old Cedric's socks." The other retorts, "Better than your mum's chamber pot." You smile despite yourself. Even in a village that smells like compost and disappointment, there's room for mockery. As the laughter fades into the buzz of early evening, you return to your hearth to prepare dinner. Tonight, it's porridge again. Barley and lentils, boiled in well water, with a bit of turnip if you're lucky. You stir slowly, watching bubbles rise like tiny swamp ghosts. The spoon you use is older than you are, the wood darkened with time and teeth marks. You slice a piece of barley bread and sniff it carefully. It's dense, slightly sour. You notice a faint discoloration on the crust, grayish purple, barely visible. You hesitate. It might be ergot, or it might be ash from the fire, or dust. You take the risk. You've taken worse. But as you chew, your mind drifts to stories. There's the tale of a village 2 hills over, where a whole family fell ill after eating moldy rye. They hallucinated for days. One man believed his wife was a crow and tried to feed her worms. Another thought he could fly. He couldn't. He broke his legs instead. Some people still think it was a curse, punishment for skipping mass or harboring witches. Others blame the grain storage, damp sacks left too close to the ground. You've never seen ergot up close, but you felt the stomach cramps, the headaches, the sudden sweats. You chew more carefully now, because you know what bad bread can do. Historians still debate whether the great outbreaks of dancing sickness in Europe were caused by ergot or just mass hysteria. You think it's both. People eat poison, then go mad. The rest go mad with them. Seems plausible enough. Your sister joins you for dinner, her steps slow but steady. You can tell she's still in pain, but she doesn't complain. Instead, she brings over a small cloth pouch. Inside are wild onions and dried sage, a trade from the herb woman. It's enough to add some flavor to the gruel, a luxury. You both eat in silence, the kind that says, "We're tired, but not unhappy." Afterward, you help wash the bowls in the basin. The water is cold and cloudy. Your fingers go numb after a minute, but the habit is there. You rinse, you scrape, you dry, you stack them like treasures. Then comes the candle. You light the stump of tallow wax and set it near the bread trap again, this time with a fresh smear of sap. You hope the fleas will go for the light and not your face. You lie down on your side, head resting on a bundle of rags that serve as a pillow. The straw rustles. You're aware of each poke, each lump. A flea bites your wrist. You scratch. Another runs down your shin. You sigh, but the air smells faintly of lavender. The porridge is sitting warm in your belly, and the light of the candle flickers gently against the wall, casting little shadows that dance like tired ghosts. You survived another day. Not gloriously, not cleanly, but completely. The candle burns low now, its stubby shape casting more shadow than light. The little bread trap at its base glistens with melted sap, and the occasional twitching black dot stuck mid-squirm. You're lying on your side, head pressed into your pillow of bundled rags, one eye half open, watching the flame tremble in the night stillness. Your sister snores gently across the room, her breath steady, one hand curled around her belly. You can hear the faint ticking of mice in the thatch above. Somewhere outside, a dog gives a half-hearted bark, then settles again. These are the sounds of a medieval village at rest. Small, earthy, unimportant to the world, but enormous in their comfort to you. But sleep won't come just yet. Your stomach's not quite full, and your body still itches in places you can't quite reach. So you do what you often do in these moments. You nibble on a heel of bread. It's from 3 days ago, dense and crusty. You gnaw at it like a rat on a broom handle. It tastes like barley, a hint of ash, and something slightly off. You pause mid-bite and eye the bread suspiciously. There's a splotch, tiny, But there, purple-gray, hiding beneath the crust, your stomach sinks. Is it mold? Is it that mold? You've heard the warnings, of course. Everyone has. The older folks say that if bread turns a certain color, it's cursed. That it whispers through your blood and steals your thoughts. That it makes the weak see angels and the strong see hell. You chew anyway, because frankly, you're hungry. Ergot. That's what the scholars call it, though no one in the village uses that word. They say witch bread or bad rye. It grows when the season is too damp, when grain is stored too close to the earth. And once it's there, it doesn't need much to spread. Just darkness, moisture, and neglect. You remember when it hit your village last spring. A child danced for 3 days straight, eyes rolled back, mouth chanting nonsense. An old man thought he was a goat and tried to eat a curtain. He died 2 days later. Some thought it was demons. Some said it was the devil's punishment. Others, quieter and fewer, said it was the grain. Historians now argue over whether those outbreaks were mass hysteria or simple poisoning. Some think it was religious ecstasy, others poor storage practices. But you lived through it. You know what you saw, and you still eat the bread because it's what you have. The taste lingers in your mouth, musty, sour, metallic. You sip a bit of water to wash it down, then lie back once more. Your eyes drift to the wall, where the candle throws faint shapes across the daub and timber. You see the outline of a rat skitter past the baseboard. It pauses, sniffing the air, then disappears again into the thatch. It's not the first, and it won't be the last. You've long since made peace with their presence. They don't bite often, and you're not the tastiest thing in the room. A louse crawls across your forehead. You flick it off gently, too tired to hunt it down. This is what nighttime hygiene looks like in your world. Flick, scratch, adjust. Whisper a prayer not to wake up covered in bites. Hope the glue bread claims a few more victims tonight. And maybe, just maybe, the mattress won't creak too loudly when you turn. You pull the wool blanket tighter around your shoulders, tucking it beneath your chin. It smells like smoke and sweat, and something faintly sour. But it's warm. You think back to the mirror in the Lord's Manor. You saw it once, years ago, during a festival. A polished metal disc, framed in gold leaf, hanging above a basin of clean water. You caught a glimpse of yourself and didn't recognize the face. Pale, wide-eyed, startled. Since then, you've only seen reflections in puddles and wash bowls. And even those lie. What do you look like now? You run your fingers over your face, rough skin, a scab near your temple, maybe a pimple near your nose. You try to remember what your mother looked like. You think she had the same nose. Maybe. The concept of vanity feels almost foreign here. When you're surrounded by dung heaps and boiling nettles, worrying about cheekbones seems absurd. Still, you wonder. You yawn, finally. The fatigue returns like an old blanket, heavier than the one you're under. You shift once more, bury your face in the crook of your elbow, and listen as the candle hisses one last time before going out. The darkness is complete now. No moon tonight, just the warmth of your own breath and the creaking of wood. Somewhere, a flea jumps. Somewhere, a neighbor coughs. And you? You're almost asleep. Almost. Morning will come soon. You feel it in the air. A shift, a cooling of the room as the fire fully dies. A pressure behind your eyes like the weight of dawn pressing inward from behind closed lids. But for now, the world is still hushed, heavy with darkness, and the quiet chorus of tiny living things in the straw and walls. You're not exactly awake. But you're no longer fully asleep either. You drift in that liminal space where the straw pokes your back just enough to remind you it's there, and where every creak in the beam sounds like a story half whispered by the house itself. Somewhere nearby, someone is moving. You hear the soft scrape of feet on dirt, the rustle of a blanket being folded back. Maybe your sister rising to stoke the first embers. Maybe a neighbor's goat giving birth in the barn. You reach down and pull your blanket tighter, curling into yourself, seeking warmth where there is little. The night was long but uneventful. By your village's standards, that's a win. No new bites in conspicuous places, no rats stepping on your face, and even the bread trap seemed to have done its part. You counted at least 5 tiny black specks glued to the sap before the candle flickered out. You hear your sister murmur something unintelligible as she pads across the room, a clay pot in her hands, probably going to fetch water. Her shoulders look heavy with sleep. Her cloth shift hangs loose around her legs, and the herbs sewn into its hem swing softly with her steps. You think again about the little things she carries through, day in and day out. The silent burdens, the ones no one speaks of. Her periods, her cloths, the shame she's never asked for but must carry like a second skin. And yet, she walks, gathers water, lights the fire, makes porridge, doesn't ask for praise. You're not sure what strength is, but it probably looks like her. You roll onto your other side, facing the wall, the daub cool against your cheek. It smells faintly of mildew and smoke. You close your eyes again, just for a moment. Suddenly, from outside, a clatter, then a splash. Someone has dropped their chamber pot. A rooster crows in protest. You grimace. That's the second time this week. You silently vow not to walk barefoot through that part of the yard today. It's nearly time to rise. You stretch slowly, your joints crackling like a fire recatching after a cold night. Your back aches from the straw, your hip from the lumpy spot you forgot to fluff last evening. You yawn, wide and slow, tongue dry and mouth tasting faintly of old lentils and the bitter bark of last night's toothbrush twig. You reach for your shift and tunic, still hanging where you left them. The tunic is wrinkled, but dry, and only slightly scratchy from where you'd beaten the fleas out the day before. As you pull it on over your head, you catch a whiff of lavender from the inside of the collar. Faint, barely there, but still present. A small win. You step outside into the morning light, gray, filtered, cautious. The air is cold, and the ground damp beneath your feet. Smoke is just beginning to rise from other huts, curling into the sky like thin fingers. A few other villagers are already awake, tending to fires, scratching at hair, greeting each other with hoarse murmurs and half-nods. Someone passes with a bundle of laundry. Another leads a pig on a frayed rope. You wave. They nod. No one expects smiles at this hour. You make your way toward the well, bucket in hand. The rope creaks, the pulley jerks. You draw up the water, heavier than you'd like. Your hands are numb from the chill. You rinse your face with a splash, the cold slapping you fully awake. As you lean over the rim of the well, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the water's surface. Not much, just a blur, a flicker of motion, an outline of a face you know more by feel than by sight. You stare for a moment, unsure what you're looking for. Recognition? A trace of youth, of pride? All you see is someone alive, and that, in this world, is plenty. You turn back toward the house, carrying your bucket, feet damp with morning dew and caked dust. You've made it through the night, and you'll do it all again tomorrow. So now, As the last cinders cool and the faint light of dawn begins to filter through the cracks in your world, take a breath. Let the sounds of the medieval village slip further into the distance. The rustle of straw, the quiet murmur of water in the basin, the gentle clinking of clay pots on rough wood. Your body, tired and sore from a day of surviving dirt, parasites, aching teeth, and cold river water, is finally at rest. Your hands, scrubbed raw but proud, lie still now. Your belly may not be full, but it is quiet. Your straw bed may poke and scratch, but it holds you gently now, because it knows you, and you know it. Feel the weight of the woolen blanket across your chest. Heavy, scratchy, familiar. The smell of herbs drifts faintly near your pillow. Lavender, maybe mint, doing their best to keep the fleas at bay. Even now, you hear the creak of wood above your head, the stretch of the roof beams sighing into another day. Let that sound rock you gently, like a lullaby made of wind and time. Outside, the world moves on. Someone lights a fire. A goat bleats. The water at the well is drawn again. But you, just for now, have nothing to do, nothing to fix, nothing to fight. You are still. And in that stillness there is peace. Sleep well, little villager. You've earned it.